Annyeonghaseyo, magandang araw po. Welcome to the 8th Philippine Korean Studies Symposium. I am Casey Rico from the Ateneo Korean Studies Program and UP Department of Linguistics, and I will be your moderator for this morning session. For more than a decade, we have witnessed how PKSS has been able to evolve, adapting to various and drastic changes in terms of research themes, formats, and platforms. We are delighted to welcome our participants joining us in the safety of your home. The 8PKSS is co-organized by the UP Korea Research Center and the UP Department of Linguistics, and it's sponsored by the Korea Foundation. On April 27, 2016, the University of the Philippines launched the Korea Research Center with the support of the Academy of Korean Studies, or AKS, Korean Studies Promotion Service, aiming to provide Filipino scholars and researchers with opportunities to widen their interest in Korean studies. The center hopes to be a venue for students and professionals to produce meaningful comparative research and to promote collaborative partnerships among Korean and Philippine institutions. The center also serves as a university-wide hub that helps promote Korean or develop Korean studies in the university and the country. It also sponsors interdisciplinary and intercollege research and educational activities on Korean studies and facilitates the training of the next generation of Koreanists in the country. The UP Department of Linguistics is an academic institution under the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, or CSSP, which is distinctly focused on the scientific study, preservation, and promotion of Philippine languages and dialects through teaching, archiving, research, and publication. It is also mandated to use its research expertise to address language issues in the country. And aside from Philippine linguistics, the department is recognized as an expert in teaching of national languages of Asia. It is designated as the Center of Excellence in Foreign Languages by the Philippines Commission on Higher Education. This year's installment of the PKSS is also being conducted in celebration of the centennial founding anniversary of the Department of Linguistics. Thank you everyone who supports UP Linguistics, and we wish to express our gratitude in making events such as this possible. We wish to greet everyone and hope all will have a fruitful learning experience today at this special workshop for Korean as a foreign language, or for foreign language educators. To formally begin our program, let us welcome Dr. Maria Cristina Gallego, Chairperson of the UP Department of Linguistics, for her welcome remarks.
Dr. Kyungmin Bae for successfully organizing 8PKSS and today's workshop on teaching Korean as foreign language. I hope that this venue provided fruitful conversations among teachers and other stakeholders regarding the methods, logistics, and benefits of foreign language teaching and learning. I am sure that we have learned a lot, not only from our resource speakers, but also from each other, and that we may be able to apply what have been discussed today in our classes. Thank you to our invited speakers and moderators for the insightful presentations, especially coming from your personal experiences in the field. Thank you to the organizers of 8PKSS, namely Dr. Kyungmin Bae, Elsie Orr, Farah Kunanan, Jem Javier, Michael Manahan, J.R. Igno, Andre Encarnacion, Chin Abrigo, Jofel Mirasol, Gino Anwingo, Victoria Vidal, and Pam Hakar. Thank you to everyone who actively participated in the workshop today, and to those who also attended the first 2 days of 8PKSS. I invite everyone to attend the other events organized by the Department of Linguistics as part of our centennial anniversary, such as various seminars on Asian languages, as well as the 15th Philippine Linguistics Congress to be held on August 23 to 25, 2023. See you in future events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gallego, for the warm welcome for our participants. And And now, to give us a special message, let us also virtually welcome with a virtual warm of applause, Ms. Janine M. Almeida Mendoza, LPT MA, Senior Education Program Specialist, Focal Person, Special Program in Foreign Language, Korean, Bureau of Curriculum Development, Special Curricular Programs, Division from the Department of Education.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
Hello, annyeonghaseyo. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, UP Korea Research Center and UP Department of Linguistics now for organizing this event and inviting our DepEd teachers. And happy centennial as well to UP Department of Linguistics. I'm excited no for our SPFL Korean teachers because I'm confident that this would be a great avenue for them to gain new insights which they could apply in teaching Korean as a foreign language. So today, I believe we are joined by SPFLK teachers from various regions from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So hello. I just also like to share to our audience this morning that Korean is the youngest, no, among the six foreign languages offered by the Department of Education, and yet it continues to grow as more and more learners and teachers are, they get interested and they are even enamored, no, in Korean language and culture. And as world becomes increasingly more globalized, learning another language and cultivating intercultural understanding as well are becoming even more and more relevant. So we at the Department of Education implement SPFL Korean for grades 7 to 10, and it offers various opportunities for our learners to not only master or learn the basics of a foreign language, but also of course to heighten their global awareness. And to make that possible, intensive language trainings are given to would-be teachers of Korean. And so we are happy and thankful that trainings are given to teachers for free, just like UPKRC and UP Department of Linguistics. So thank you for offering this for free to our SPFL Korean teachers. And to our dear SPFLK teachers joining with us today, I hope that you make the most out of this learning opportunity. For, of course, learning a foreign language is it's never a walk in the park. No, what more teaching a foreign language? But of course, with the help of our stakeholders and friends from the higher education sector, such as UPKRC and UP Department of Linguistics, of course, together we can do so much. I'm proud now that two of our teachers are actually speakers for the AM session. So it just goes to show that really we can learn from each other, bearing in mind, of course, our goal, and that is to produce Filipino learners who are globally competitive and, of course, who possess as well cross-cultural competence and sensitivity. So yeah, with that, good morning, everyone, and happy learning. Thank you.
Kamsahamnida. Thank you so much, Ma'am Mendoza, for joining us today and for your special message for our participants. Now, before we begin our program, before I call on our speakers for today, we would like to remind our viewers of some house rules. You may send your questions and comments to our panelists throughout the event in the comment section of the Facebook and YouTube live streaming or here in the chat box section of Zoom. The questions and comments will then be read during the open forum and will be addressed by our guest speakers. We're also reminded that the whole forum is a safe space and thus will not tolerate any form of bullying and trolling, academic or otherwise. The organizer reserves the right to remove those who will create any disruption in any part of our program today. We would also like to inform you that this event will be recorded and uploaded to the official UPKRC Facebook page and the YouTube channel. So this morning we have three speakers who will share various topics on KFL. No, at this moment, let me introduce our first speaker for her presentation. Miss Maria Eirish S. Zulueta is a master teacher 2 at Las Piñas National High School and currently teaching special program for foreign language Korean and Araling Panlipunan. She is a fellow of Asia Pacific Teacher Exchange Program of the Ministry of Education of the Republic of Korea and the UNESCO APCEIU, and active in promoting and developing teaching and learning resources related to Korean language learning, global citizenship education, and civic education. Aside from these engagements, she also takes the lead in securing partnerships with middle and secondary schools in South Korea, further schools intercultural exchange program, and Korean speaking enhancement class. Irish Sonsingnim, please begin your presentation as soon as you are ready.
Good morning po. Ms. Pam, please share my PPT po. Okay. Good morning. Today, I hope to share the background of the development of the localized KFL materials for SPFL Korean Grade 7 and how these materials became instrumental in overcoming the challenges in teaching and learning Korean in public schools. In 2018, SPFL Korean was officially piloted. Next slide, please. In 2018, SPF Korean was officially piloted in 10 public schools in the National Capital Region, and teachers solely relied in using Sejong Korean textbooks developed by the National Institute of Korean Language in teaching the subject. These materials had been helpful for us during the pilot year of the SPFL teachers because they were trained in using these resources, and these served as our basic reference during our training in 2017. In 2020, the curriculum of SPFL Korean under the Special Curricular Program of the Department of Education was finally approved and implemented in the field. The uniform curriculum to be adopted by all foreign languages under the SPFL was designed using the Common European Framework of Reference for Language and aligned to the standards of K-12 curriculum. The curriculum provides the general content and performance standards and learning objectives to be achieved at the end of the lesson. However, identifying the targeted topics, grammar rules, and culture aligned to learning objectives became challenging for the teachers as the textbooks and workbook we were using was not aligned to the design of the newly released curriculum. Furthermore, the COVID-19 pandemic at that time shifted the face-to-face classes to distance learning that posed more problems in implementing the programs, which include the availability of teaching and learning resources appropriate for distance learning, unpacking of learning objectives indicated in the most essential learning competencies, less instructional supervision and guidance to our learners, and difficulty in teaching the basic reading and writing of Hangul in grade 7. For over a year of battling with the pandemic, the SPFL teachers tried to resolve the issue by producing their teaching resources that could be produced for the students and seeking the assistance of the parents to continuously encourage their children to attend the online class session to develop the basic reading of Hangul. Next slide, please. These challenges brought us to the realization of the vital role and importance of learning and teaching resources aligned to the curriculum and relevant to both self-paced and on-site learning, especially in having and providing accessible textbook that is essential in the development of the desired learning outcomes and suited to the needs of the 21st century learners living in an interconnected and globalized society. Next slide. Next slide, please. Fortunately, in 2021, the Ministry of Education of the Republic of Korea and International Korean Education Foundation took an initiative to support the Korean language learners overseas and partnered with the Korean language experts in the Philippines, Korean Cultural Center, and the Department of Education in developing and producing a customized pre-A1 Korean language textbook. The localized pre-A1 textbook is the customized version of the global general purpose Korean textbooks tailored to the context and culture of the Filipino learners. The development team of the localized textbook consists of Korean language experts and textbook writers who are native speakers and practicing teachers and Korean language experts in the Philippines. The team conducted consultative meetings regularly to ensure that the localized textbooks is aligned to the design of SPFL curriculum for grade 7, presented learner-centered and engaging classroom tasks for Filipino students, included learning activities suitable for the school context, and has a balanced representation of cultures in the Philippines and South Korea. The equal cultural representation of both countries in the localized textbook does not only aims to cultivate the communicative competence of the students, but also permeates the concept of international understanding, specifically in terms of appreciating one's cultural identity and common shared values of different countries, understanding cultural differences, and respect for diversity, which are essential in developing a global citizen. In this way, our Filipino learner may use their knowledge in Korean language for cross-cultural communication, which is an important global competency. Next slide. As a result of this endeavor, the development team produced and completed learning and teaching package consisted of textbook, workbook, teacher's guide, and USB containing the complete listening activities and dialogue. The package was distributed prior to the opening of the school year 2022 to 2023 and currently utilized in the implementing schools of SPFL Korean. The Pre-A1 localized textbook offers additional units in addition to the global edition of Pre-A1 to ensure its alignment to the school schedule, design of SPFL curriculum, and social content guidelines for printed materials of the Department of Education. Next slide. The localized textbook is consistent to the principle of the K-12 basic education program indicated in DepEd Order 21 series of 2019 as reflected to the 4 sections in each unit of the textbook consisted of introduction, hamkeheyo, halsuisoyo, and waginheyo. These sections are learner-centered, developmentally relevant, culture sensitive, and presented differentiated activities that promote collaboration while recognizing the different learning styles and multiple intelligences of the learners. Next slide. Also, the localized textbook included the Filipino characters of Chris and Maria that represent the Filipino learners. Along with the textbook is the Pre-A1 workbook that features activities in which the students will be familiar with reading and writing Hangul and can review and practice vocabulary and proper usage of grammar. Next slide. On the other hand, the teacher's guides provide useful information on vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and culture, which is helpful in assisting the Korean language teachers with little experience in teaching the subject. There are also learning objectives, class overview, and teaching tips present in the guide to assist the teacher in preparing their daily lesson log. For most SPFL Korean teachers and learners, this new teaching and learning package is a breakthrough, especially in grade 7, as we have a more accessible materials aligned to the curriculum standards and fit for distance learning and face-to-face classes. Next slide. At this juncture, please let me share the experiences of the students in our school and the selected teachers in the National Capital Region in utilizing the localized teaching and learning resources. The point of discussion during the FGD among the grade 7 SPFL students revolved around their perception about the use of suitable language, design, activities, inputs, and cultural content of the textbook. The grade 7 SPFL students believe that the use of English language is helpful for them in understanding more the grammar rules and instruction of activities and in reinforcing their ability to recall the vocabulary in Korean, which for them is an essential part of learning a foreign language. They also shared that using English as a medium of instruction in the textbook helped them to have better understanding of the lesson and beneficial during their independent learning. Because of their familiarity of the medium of instruction, they feel more confident in understanding the grammar rules and Korean culture and lessen their difficulties in learning a foreign language. The students also put high value on colorful illustrations, font styles, and quality of material used in the textbook. All of them felt delighted and excited using the localized textbook as they were familiar with the illustrations and pictures that represent the Philippine culture. The presence of Filipino characters of Maria and Chris in the textbooks also made them feel connected with the learning resources because it represents the Filipino learners, which gave them excitement in reading the textbook. Further, the illustration helped them to recall easily the new vocabulary. They also felt special and important when they received the textbook because it is their first time to utilize a glossy, colorful, and relatable learning resources that motivated them to read and study more often. Next slide. On the other hand, the inclusion of different games, songs, comic strip, art-making projects, and dialogues made the students' learning more engaging and fun. In particular, they shared that they love the comic strip about the history of Hangul, as the plot is almost the same with K-drama that uses the time travel element with a Filipino character named Maria. They became curious and excited on how Maria will interact and learn from King Sejong. The colorful design of the comic strip was also helpful in making them understand the significant value of Hangul in increasing the ability of the commoners to read during Joseon Dynasty and the principles of basic letters of consonant and vowels, which contributed to their appreciation of learning Korean. They also put high value on the interactive games as the competition angle challenged them to study more, to be prepared, and to work as a team. Next slide. They also pointed out that the explanation of grammar rules in English helped them to easily understand its function and proper use. However, since the explanation is brief and short, they emphasize the important roles of the teachers in supplementing a more extensive explanation of the grammar rules. In terms of presentation of culture in the localized textbook, the students claimed that inclusion of Korean culture in intercultural activities helped them to be familiar with the culture of language they are studying, and understanding it helped them to have a sense of connectedness to the Korean culture while appreciating their own culture as well. For them, the intercultural activities helped them to identify the common shared values of the Filipino and Koreans, as well as the distinct and uniqueness of each culture. This helped them to respect cultural diversity and understanding the shared sense of humanity. Next slide, please. I also got an opportunity to learn the insights of some SPFL teachers from our cities in the National Capital Region regarding the utilization of the localized textbook and teacher's guide. The questions provided among the teachers centered on the usability of resources in terms of providing information of Korean culture, instructional delivery, assessment of learning outcomes, and the relevance of localized textbook for Filipino learners. According to the teachers, the localized textbook gave them accurate information about the Korean culture, which helped them to explain and guide the students in identifying and appreciating the values, customs, and norms of Korea while recognizing its similarities with Philippine culture. Although they put value on the cultural information present in the teacher's guide, they also highlighted the importance of teachers' actual exposure to Korean culture through immersion program or cultural lesson to avoid misinterpretation of cultural meaning and misperception of social norms and customs. In this way, they can avoid stereotypes, cultural misunderstanding, and cultural essentialism. In terms of for its usability for instructional delivery, the alignment of teacher's guide to the current curriculum, specifically for quarter 1 and 2, is helpful in designing learner-centered lessons and make the crafting and implementation of DLL more efficient, specifically for those who are on their first year of teaching SPFL Korean. The teacher's guide also provides easier explanation of grammar points, proper pronunciation, and nuances, which make them more confident in teaching the subject. Next slide, please. The workbook, on the other hand, made the assessment more efficient as it is aligned to the textbook, which provide them data about the attainment of the expected learning outcomes. The result of the assessment in the workbook also provide them with feedback about the progress of the students in learning Korean, which is significant in harnessing the macro skill. On the other hand, they suggested that the inclusion of a topic type test might also be useful to gradually train the students in taking the language proficiency test in the future. Finally, for the SPFL teachers, the localized textbooks is relevant for the Filipino learners because of its appropriate instruction and explanation of grammars and cultures to the learners in pre-A1 level, presence of visual and text related to the target culture, source culture, and international culture, which make learning more relatable for the students and significant in the 21st century, and the suggested student-oriented learning activities which motivated the students to be engaged in learning and interacting with their classmates. Next slide. Considering the experiences of the students and teachers in using the localized textbook, we can surmise that in developing localized Korean language textbooks, developers should have a clear foresight or vision and possible ways in elevating the status of Korean language education by taking into account the characteristics of learners, needs of the teachers, roles and influence of technology in education, demands of globalized and multicultural societies, and strengthening the partnership among the educational institutions, educational ministries, cultural centers, and teachers in the Philippines and South Korea. In this way, we can lessen the learning gap and create a bridge among the Korean educators in creating a more systematic and relevant teaching approach to Korean language education. May this meaningful collaboration continue to move forward for the benefit of our dearest Filipino students. Before I end, I would like to show my gratitude to the people and institutions who continuously and tirelessly find ways to support the needs of SPFL teachers and students by developing a localized Korean language textbook fit for the Philippine learners and school. First of all, to the Ministry of Education of the Republic of Korea, International Korean Education Foundation, and Textbook Development Team in South Korea, headed by Dr. Kang Sung-ye, for funding the publication of the textbook and carefully aligning the textbook to the SPFL curriculum. And we really appreciate Dr. Riza Gozano, Ms. Janine Almeida Mendoza, and Director Jocelyn Andaya of Bureau of Curriculum Development of the Department of Education, and Director Im Yong-a of Korean Cultural Centers in the Philippines for assisting the textbook developers with the data related to SPFL curriculum, distribution of learning and teaching resources, and for continuously finding ways to expand and address the needs of SPFL Korean schools. To the SPFL teachers who provided useful classroom tasks and shared their students' background to ensure the contextualization of pre-A1 textbook, thank you so much for taking the time in sharing your wonderful ideas despite a very challenging workload at the height of the pandemic. And many thanks to Professor Maria Cristina Rico, Professor Mark De Chavez, Professor Yen Chua, and our dearest Song-Sing Dr. Kyungmin Be, whom from the start was already working side by side with the Department of Education and SPFL teachers to implement and address the needs of SPFL Filipino students and teachers. Your contribution to the professional growth of the teachers and development of relevant resources is truly appreciated, admirable, and inspirational. We are more than blessed to have you po in our program. Next slide po. The development of localized pre-A1 textbook is a milestone of our program. Now, the remaining challenge for us is how to make it more functional in our respective localities and to take advantage of its use to better deliver an accessible and quality education for our learners. I know and I witnessed the many challenges of our program, most especially our SPFL teachers who decided to stay in the program even at the most challenging times of their careers. I hope that we can open more dialogues to know more the areas that we need to improve and to find more opportunities on how to strengthen our program. We must normalize and foster positive collaboration and open communication, focus on empowering the teachers in fostering global competency, which foreign language learning is anchored with. Next slide po. Tandaan natin na ang tunay na bansang makabata ay isang bansang naglilinang ng gurong dekalidad at naglalaan ng kagamitang panturong may kalidad. Sa ganitong paraan lamang natin mahuhubog ang isang batang makabansa na mayroong malawak na pag-unawa sa kanyang mundong ginagalawan. May we continue to be true to our mandate that DepEd is para sa bayan, para sa guro, at para sa bata. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Eirish. 감사합니다. Now let me call on the second speaker for this morning session. Mr. Romnick P. Nicolas is a teacher from Rizal National Science High School, Department of Education, Division of Rizal. He is one of the batch 2 teachers who completed the Korean language training from the Korean Cultural Center and Kyunghee University, South Korea. Currently, he is involved in the validation of Korean language textbook materials developed by the International Korean Education Foundation, or IKEF. Romnick Sansenim, please start your presentation as soon as you are ready.
Morning, ma'am. Thank you so much for the introduction. Yan, maiintindihan ko na yung K-drama na pinapanood ko. Ma'am, ano po sa Korean yung mahal kita? Or paano po sabihin sa Korean yung ano? Ma'am, try ko lang po. Alam niyo po, ma'am, ang galing po ng friend kong mag-Korean, gusto ko rin pong matuto. These are the questions we commonly hear from our learners, and also the lines that motivate us to keep going. 안녕하세요, 여러분. 저는 롬닉입니다. 만나서 반갑습니다. So I'm here to deliver my topic on foreign language learning in shipping modalities, challenges and opportunities. And this talk will highlight my own experiences, my colleagues and learners in teaching and learning Korean language. Sorry, I'm having a problem with the presentation. So ignited by the dynamic relationship between Korea and the Philippines, special program in foreign language Korean was launched in Rizal National Science High School on July 19, 2019, which also marked its pilot implementation. The launching was attended by the key personnel involved in implementation and monitoring of the program. So here are some of the pictures that show how we had the launching on our first day of implementation. The school was at height when they experienced the Korean culture caravan for the first time. DepEd officials, members of the LGU, invited teachers and students from various public high schools, and the whole school community participated in the event. Everyone experienced wearing hanbok, playing cultural games, film screening, traditional art class, and K-pop dance. This also made a lasting impact among learners. But when they are asked about the list of experiences they have had being students under the SPFL, they would instantly include the Korean culture caravan transpired in our school. Months after the pilot implementation of SPFL, pandemic happened. I remember thinking how I would reach my learners knowing that it was my first time to experience shift in teaching modality. In my in my years of teaching, I found the pandemic a real dilemma, but a splendor in disaster. The pandemic made me realize my potentials more than my passion. It gave me the opportunity to upskill, reskill, or even discover some of the relevant skills needed to survive the term new normal. The pandemic changed the way we teach our learners from face-to-face to online distance learning. And we have interviewed some of our learners, and these are their responses.
Romnick Sonseng Nim, we cannot clearly hear the audio. Can you check again?
Wait lang po. I'll try to fix the technical problem.
Yes, Sonseng Nim.
Where is the part po where I can share the audio?
From Zoom, Sonseng Nim.
Sharing.
Yeah, I think you can look at the top part of the Zoom app. Then you can click there, share audio. Can you see it?
Okay.
Apo. Apo. Okay.
And this is a short video that highlights the challenges encountered by SPFLK students during the online distance learning.
In the past 2 years, I've experienced the shift from ODR classes to face-to-face classes while learning Korean. The only take I can get from this is online class was much more difficult than face-to-face classes in terms of learning in Google Classroom and the internet being super unstable that I couldn't understand most of the lessons, that I had to watch videos on YouTube just to understand the lesson. And now on face-to-face classes, I can see my teachers write on the board and explain the vocabularies clearly and with no interruptions.
The hardships I probably had in online distance learning is the poor internet connection, and I think now since nag-implement na sila ng FTF, I can learn Korean easily.
One of the challenges I encountered during the pandemic while learning SPFL is learning the basic or alphabets like Batchim, differentiating the consonant and vowels.
One of the challenges I experienced while learning the Korean language during online distance learning was the lack of resources in order to receive proper schooling. There were a lot of times when I experienced a loss of internet connection and not having the right devices in order to attend my classes and do certain tasks. Because of these circumstances, I had trouble keeping up with most of the discussions. On the other hand, during face-to-face learning, I had difficulty with memorizing all of the vocabulary and grammar particles introduced. I feel that the lessons they give us are too advanced for beginners and especially for us who are not familiar with the Korean language.
One of the challenges that I encountered during learning Korean was the accessibility to direct communication, asking clarifications from our teachers. Though technology brings a lot of advantages to learning, we cannot deny the efficiency of learning and grades when it comes to socially interacting with people. That made me realize that the key to learning Korean was communication through social interaction with people.
솔직히 한국어는 너무 어려운 언어입니다. 문법이랑 수많은 어휘는 큰 가정 도전 과제입니다. 4년 동안 유행병 기간 동안 집에서 한국어를 공부하는 것은 어렵고 피곤하고 걱정스럽고 외로웠습니다. 특히 전염병이 한창일 때 말이죠. 모든 것이 저를 걱정하게 했습니다. 하지만 저는 그것을 극복할 수 있었다고 생각합니다.
Again, it can be highlighted in the video clips and in the survey administered to 195 SPFL student respondents, the major concerns and challenges they encountered in learning Korean. And these are, first, poor and unstable internet connection, time management, lack of familiarity and understanding the lessons, lack of focus and motivation due to various distractions, unreliable and unresponsive online devices, less opportunities to interact with others during class, difficult to bring up concerns during online synchronous classes, and other minor concerns related to this. However, due to these concerns, the effective delivery and execution of the lessons at times also failed. This brought numerous subject-related concerns, such as failure to hear the words correctly, insufficient time to master the vocabs and grammar, lesser time to practice writing, and even speaking. Being the sole teacher teaching the subject for the last 3 years, I took the courage to embrace what is new in my profession and how I would be able to live up to the expectations of my school, particularly my learners. Juggling multi-grades and varied subjects was a challenge for me, especially at times that I needed to hardly prepare to effectively execute the lessons. But alongside the challenges are also opportunities. Some students will think that the pandemic did not have any influence on the way they learned, but on the perspective of other students, the pandemic brought some positive life-changing impact on them. They believe that the online distance learning modality also helped them to learn and be exposed to various educational platforms. In the survey I conducted among 195 student respondents across levels, majority of them believe that they were able to support their learning using online applications, digital resources, websites and pages, and various apps suggested and used also by the teachers. Also, they believe that the new modality gave them more time to learn at their own pace and time. Some highlighted and even stressed that the pandemic taught them more personal values such as self-discipline, mindfulness, responsibility, and even independence. There might be challenges at the beginning, but this also opened new door of opportunities to all of us to even improve not only our language skills, but more importantly, our attitude toward learning and teaching the language. Some of these are the online tutorial. We were able to attend a series of Korean language classes facilitated by one of our professors in Kyung University, Edison Singim. It was usually conducted at 8 p.m. KST, around 7 p.m. in the Philippines. Students enjoy their experience learning from a native Korean language teacher. For our grade 7 learners who have been into embracing learning a new language, it was indeed fun and enjoyable. Online training and platforms. The online platform and social connections I have virtually also gave me and my colleagues a broader avenue to learn some of the so-called 21st century skills. The pandemic gave us more time to discover and practice these skills at the comfort of our homes. Imagine the ubiquitous online webinars, trainings, workshops, output-based virtual events that interest you and surely won't have any second thought participating in. All these contributed to skill sets I have now as a language teacher. Support and collaboration in the conduct of Festival of Talents and culminating performance. So another opportunity that the pandemic brought is how we could easily collaborate with one another. In the online activities we conducted, like the school Festival of Talents and culminating performances, it was easy for us to coordinate and top some of our colleagues, judges in various school events and contests. This is where we truly see the big help of having group chat or direct message. We were able to connect with our colleagues and were able to seek their assistance in evaluating and judging some of the students' entries in contests and events. Our collaboration and partnership intensified as we exchanged roles and know-how skills in some of the activities we conducted in our respective schools. Resources and instructional material sharing. With the aim of improving the implementation of SPFL in the Philippines and adopt implementation practices among SPFL partner schools, teachers took the initiative to share their materials and resources, even the ones crafted from the workshops they attended. Also, through the events conducted in schools and functional web pages of various schools for implementation of SPFL Korean, partner schools were able to adopt and benchmark some of these best practices. As DepEd schools with one vision and mission, implementation of SPFL Korean in our respective schools has never been a competition. That's why you see how generous the schools are in sharing their best practices. The admission process. The admission process become easy compared to the usual enlistment we had during pre-pandemic. We gathered students' info and conducted interest survey among learners who are willing to be part of the SPFL classes easily. Next is the use of online learning platforms and apps. Learners were exposed to various educational and learning apps. They were able to use, mostly in their online classes, Google Workspace for education, such as Google Meet, Classroom, Forms, Docs, Sheets, etc. They were also oriented in the use of other apps such as Padlet, Canva, ClassPoint, Flipgrid, other online gamified apps such as Kahoot and Quizzes, and other Android apps such as Duolingo, Upping Korean, and Nuri Sejong online apps. So transitioning to face-to-face learning after a pandemic was quite a challenge among teachers and students, a challenge which they eventually pulled through. So in October 2021, under the DepEd Memo 71 series of 2021, the DepEd announced the preparations to be made for the pilot implementation of face-to-face expansion and transitioning to the new normal. Due to the stringent safety guidelines and protocols, asking for the approval for the limited face-to-face classes was never easy. A maximum of 20 students only per classroom, bounded by the set of protocols to follow, made the implementation of face-to-face overwhelming and exhausting. Imagine how tedious would it be to cater learners based on their preferred learning modality. So this was the time when blended learning came in. Concerns and challenges are just always around the corner, even how much we try to avoid them. Regardless of the modality we implement in our school, it will not always be a smooth sail. Currently, as the school tries to find ways on how to make every undertaking a success, still identified needs to address continue to surface. And some of these challenges are clarity on how the words are pronounced, since most of us would still be using mask or will be putting our mask on, even teaching our students, even we're teaching face-to-face. So short-term retention or difficulty remembering vocabulary, reading without comprehension, faster pace in learning Korean, limited time with the amount of vocabulary and grammar particles we need to discuss and the students need to learn, complexity of Korean language topics as we proceed to the next level or next grade level. So in preparation for the full-blown implementation of face-to-face classes, we underwent trainings and webinars aiming to holistically equip us with sufficient knowledge and skills as we facilitate classes in the new normal. So this include write-shops facilitated by our division were commonly held to prepare localized materials, learning activity sheets, and lesson exemplars we will use in our classes. The school also has come up with a study entitled SPFL Knows, an online learning platform for selected grade 7 students of Rizal National Science High School, with the aim of providing budding learners an online platform that will help them learn the basic of Korean language. And this also serves as our first step toward crafting action or subject-related research that will have direct impact on the performance of our students and in the implementation of SPFL in general. Korean language refresher course. Batch 1 teachers from NCR just recently finished their 3-month refresher language course, while Batch 2 teachers are currently having their Korean language course and will last until March 31, 2023. Because of the overwhelming support of the Korean government through the Korean Cultural Center in the Philippines, the school received numerous instructional, and reading materials, which eventually led to the establishment of the school's Korean library. So this provides a cozy area for learners to study and do things related to the subject. Regarding the books distributed to the learners, we are very fortunate to have the new set of books. For this, give us lesser time in preparation of instructional materials. We are no longer making worksheets and task sheets this time, since all these are readily available in the provided textbooks and workbooks of the IKEF, or the International Korean Education Foundation. The textbooks also provide learners fun, gamified, and interactive tasks which they truly enjoy. So as we embrace the new normal, our school aims to improving the implementation of SPFL Korean. So we are planning to expand its implementation by introducing the language to other teachers, not only in our school, but also within our district. Also, we look into the possibility that the language and culture be introduced to selected grade 6 students from public elementary schools as our way to prepare them as they aspire to be part of the Rizayan community. Lastly, collaboration with other stakeholders and partners. So our implementation of SPFL is a work in progress and undistinguished, but we will never stop refining our implementation to address the gaps, impact the teaching and learning positively, and increase involvement and activity engagement among our stakeholders. And seeing how our learners confidently participate and represent our school in various contests and other events is a good manifestation that we are on the right track. And to end my short talk, let me share you this short video as Ma'am Richie, one of our SPFLK teachers, shares her challenges and insights in teaching SPFL, which she eventually pulled through.
Learning a new language, especially a foreign language, is hard. How much more in teaching it, right? There are a lot of challenges that I encountered during a few months of teaching Korean. We just finished our training last year and I was tasked to teach 9th grade already. Learning a new language, especially a foreign language, is hard. How much more in teaching it, right? There are a lot of challenges that I encountered during the first few months of teaching Korean. We just finished our training last year and I was tasked to teach 9th grade already. As a result, I have to study my lessons well. I have to make sure that I am on the right track. I keep on studying every night, reading, remembering, and understanding the vocabs and the grammar that were taught to us by Subin Sansingin. However, since we had proper training and there are still a group of people who genuinely helps us to become better in imparting knowledge to our students, it became easier for me to teach this foreign language. And of course, it is with deep appreciation that I could still ask my former classmates that eventually became my friends in this journey. And I will continue to learn and keep on sharing my knowledge while of course enjoying it. So to everyone, keep on believing that we can, and just like what I am always saying to my students, 할 수 있어요. 정말 감사합니다.
여기까지 할 거예요. 감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다. Romnick 선생님, 감사합니다. Thank you for that very interesting presentation. Before I call on our last speaker for this morning session, I would like to remind everyone to please share your comments or questions to Eirish 선생님, to Romnick 선생님, and later to Yen 선생님 too, if you want to ask them questions about their presentations or about teaching Korean language in their respective schools. So now let me call on the last speaker for this morning session. Ms. Yen Chua is a senior lecturer in the Department of Linguistics, University of the Philippines, Diliman, where she teaches beginner level Korean, and she also teaches Korean subjects at the King Sejong Institute, Quezon City, under UST Angelicum. She finished her master's degree under the Department of Korean Education at Korea University and is currently taking up a doctorate program in language education at UP Diliman. She also translated 2 Korean essay books into their official English versions, Yearning for Home While I'm at Home and I'm Not Lazy, I'm on energy saving mode. Please give Yen 선생님 a virtual round of applause.
네, 감사합니다. KC 선생님. Can I just confirm if the audio is audible?
Yes,
Yes,
선생님.
okay. 네,
Yeah.
감사합니다. Okay, so I will be sharing my presentation. 감사합니다. Okay, so for today, I will be sharing with you a case of dialogic feedback in an online KFL classroom. So this is actually one of the pictures I took in my online class. So this is gonna focus on the beginner level Korean and how dialogic feedback played a role on the learning and studying process of Korean in the tertiary department. So but I think even though like the main topic of this whole workshop is basic education, we could still get some general points and other another perspective in providing feedback, which is of course very important and essential in a Korean foreign language classroom. Okay, so I'll just walk you through with the contents of today's presentation. So first off, I will be sharing with you the online KFL classroom situation, my personal experience, and the importance of feedback. And I'm going to introduce the concept of dialogic feedback as well, and written feedback classification, which has become the primary means of feedback during the online KFL classroom, and the dialogic feedback case itself, and at the end, I will be sharing with you some tips I have learned during the process when or during this feedback case. So first off, I think everyone could agree with me. So this doesn't really differ from grade school, high school, or tertiary. And I think it's all the same. That during the online KFL classroom situation, we are expecting that there's still continuous communication between teachers and students, and so that we could ensure that students can effectively and efficiently receive feedback on their performance. Because if they wouldn't know about their performance, so how would they know how to improve it, or what strong points they have, etc., etc. But of course, during the pandemic, the online classroom, we had fewer real-time interactions. Of course, there are asynchronous platforms such as Google Classroom, Canvas Classroom, and other LMS. But of course, there's fewer real-time. You can't really reply to their questions right ahead, and they won't receive immediate feedback. So there's downtime there. So in the reality, it gave us fewer real-time interactions that continuously challenge efficient feedback. So during this time in the online KFL classroom, providing written comments as a primary means of feedback was there. So for example, if you will see this screenshot, so I have provided my students written feedback. I don't know for the other teachers, but of course with the time that we have, and because we don't see them each other personally, and then there are few synchronous classes, I think most of us have relied on written comments, written feedback as the main source. But with this, of course, there are also limitations such as the absence of nonverbal clues. How would they know if galit tayo? How would they know or like the tone of our comments? Of course, they read these comments in their perspective. So of course, there's that limitation. Another one is, of course, during the height of the pandemic, everything was everything was a shock, and probably some other teachers, even though I'm relatively young, I actually had a struggle in using these educational technologies such as the Zoom platform and other LMS. Then there, of course, there are also limited functions first, because of the limited educational technology resources, especially in the Philippines, and of course the skills of the teachers, because it's not let's face it, it's not really a priority during the education curriculum, and it was not focused at all. Okay, but if you would look at these comments, these are some of the comments I made during the first part of the pandemic. So please check the corrections I made. So I commented, I annotated their work, and then I put the score like this one in the comment. But because the students, they also, it was also their first time in using the platform, which correction po, di po kasi lumalabas sa akin. So there was this kind of communication breakdown in between. So we had to assist each other and blah blah blah. So there are these challenges in the online KFL classroom. So for the feedback, of course, the short-term goal is to correct errors or point out areas of improvement of the students. So yun naman talaga, when you give the students feedback, so what do we usually input there? So error correction, what you need to improve. Okay, but in the long term, if you would think about it, okay, so the long-term goal is to produce independent, self-regulating learners. So in time, they correct these corrections on their own, and then they improve what they have to improve. Okay, so we are really, at first we're just giving them what to correct, but in time, as we go on, they should be able to regulate themselves and correct their errors. But this could only be attained if the teacher successfully deliver feedback. Okay, if we deliver the feedback and when the students effectively use the feedback to improve. Of course, it would be useless if the students, they wouldn't utilize them at all, and they wouldn't see it, they wouldn't even look at it. Okay, there are some cases that students don't even look at the feedback, because sometimes they have this kind of feelings of refusal. Bakit? Kasi natatakot. So, natatakot kay something, natatakot kay teacher. So, usually, they have like this aversion in towards feedback. So, today, I'd like to discuss that the dialogic feedback, which means that the teacher giving the feedback, the students using it and effectively using it, is the key, okay, to produce the independent, self-regulating learners in the long run. Okay, so just a brief background. So since I will be focusing on the written feedback classification, which has been the primary means of feedback, so I'll just walk you through the kinds of feedback that I used in this presentation. So of course, the directive. So these are usually imperative constructions. So for example, write this word in full. Modeling. So like in this example, so if you do it like this, then this is the right way to do it. Basically saying, telling the student. Question. So if you would have, more questions, follow-up questions about their work, you could also give questions as a type of feedback. Suggestions. So suggesting. So this is kind of softer kind of directive, so that it won't be too strong of an imperative for the student. For the explanation, so rather than just having a directive that do this, do that, so you'll give the background why you should do this, why you should do that. Praise, of course. So this is not, so like feedback, it's not supposed to be all error corrections. You should also tell the student what you did correctly. So it's kind of like praising the student as well, para hindi rin sila panghinaan ng loob. Of course, interpersonal could also play the action, so that they could still, they could still look at something named like a friendly entity and not an enemy. Okay, so that the students know that, okay, something name is here to help us and not to castigate our errors. Okay, so a little touch of interpersonal comments would also be a great addition to feedback, and of course others, which don't really which are not under a specific category. And with this, the ideal, of course, we have that ideal concept of feedback. So Frank and Morton said in their paper It's a sustainable balance. It's a very ideal, no? Balance, lagi sinasabi sa thesis. Balance of indication of error correction, acknowledgement and evaluation of students' progress and command of the skills assessed, indication of methods of improvement and resources to consult, encouragement, facilitation of self-reflection, and action planning. Okay, so for today, in this case, I'll show you how I was able to at least try to provide my students with the ideal feedback only through written feedback. So like you see, this is an example. So this case will be focusing on a beginner level Korean as a foreign language class of 17 students, and the task in this feedback provision is an oral reading assessment. So what I did was to make them read a certain passage. Then they recorded it, uploaded it in Google Classroom. I checked them one by one of the pronunciation, marked the pronunciation, and then for the remarks, I put comments on how they on their reading process. So how they read it, what they should improve, what they did well. Okay, and then so this is for the feedback was the one I mentioned. I also got their feedback through study journal. So if you would look at this, so this is a study journal in Google Forms. So everything here was online. So of course, in order to know what the students want, syempre, if we look at it in a business, we should know, we have this know your customer, know your client. So since the students are the recipients of the feedback, you should know like how they like their feedback. So if you would prepare something for someone, you would want to know what their likes and dislikes are, right? So and with that, so here are some of the if of the comments I put. These are the shortest ones. So great accuracy, average speed. Remember not to cut the words syllabically, and then just be careful when pronouncing the but. So these are some comments, and I also had long comments like this one for students who would have more things to improve in their reading process. Okay, so for this one, I have quantified this one and categorize this based on the categories I presented a while ago. So, and then if you will look at how I presented these comments, so praise, praise really is a big factor. So it played majority. It occurred in majority of the cases of the feedback I gave in my class. Then explanation, suggestion, directive, and so on. So, for example, for praise, even though it's praise, every student, so everyone likes praises. But when you are giving feedback, always remember that great job, good job, harasaya is not the key to give praise. So when you're praising the student, you should pinpoint what are the specific points that this student got correctly. What are the strong points? So like if you will see the examples, accuracy rate and phrasing is perfect. Okay. Now the student will know that okay, okay pala yung accuracy rate ko. Okay pala yung phrasing ko. Okay, speed is high. So you would if you would praise the students, if you would give praising as feedback, it shouldn't be just plain that great job, good. No. So it's acknowledging effort with the specific components of the exercise. Next one is the explanation. So if you would see, there are detailed ways where I explained, for example, the omission, okay, the phrasing, and until the pronunciation. So so that the student will know, will be able to locate where he or she or them they committed the error in reading. For the suggestion, so this is like a softened kind of explanation. So it's okay. So sometimes you would use lexical choices and it's okay to enunciate them. Okay, so that you would not come out so strong to the student. For directive, so directive is an imperative, as I mentioned a while ago, more an imperative construction. So as much as possible, I tried to limit the directive, so that I wouldn't be I wouldn't present myself in an authoritative point of view. No? So I want my students as much as possible to like treat me as someone who is with them in this error correction process, and not like, a dictator says do this, do that. Because I think I used more lesser directive construction. So like this one. So open your mouth. Watch out for this one. Always pronounce. So it's like a police in language. For interpersonal, it's also, since we already have the educational technologies everywhere, so we could also use multimodal text such as emojis, emoticon, smileys. So based on the feedback I got from my students, they really appreciate this one because since, like I mentioned, the written feedback has the limitation of not having nonverbal cues. So it really makes the student, feel lighter when they see smileys like this one. So it makes them feel that okay, teachers are also humans with emotions as well. And for the modeling, so it's like for loan words like this, it's kind of like an explanation, except that you're pinpointing what should be done and modeling it in front of the student. So how should we give feedback like this through students? So one of the tips I would give at the end of this presentation is that do a sandwich method. So not just put phrases, not just put explanations or directive. It should be like phrase, explanation, directive. Use these various feedback categories so that you get the whole package. You get a fruit salad, kumbaga. Okay, so of course you could go with the praise first so that the student would feel lighter and would feel validated as they read the first part, and then you try to explain what went wrong, and then what should they do to went wrong, and why should they do this, and you could end with the suggestion. So this is just a sample. It's not really like a template, no? But what I mean when I share this one is that when you provide feedback, it's better if you do it like in various categories. So this is also praise, directive. So you you tell them the good things, and then you tell them what could be done to improve, and also like this one, praise, directive. So even though I gave them praises, I still make sure to make it directive or suggestions afterwards so that they would, not settle in that level. So there's still more room for improvement. So how did the students react to this one? So for the study journals, for the results of the study journals, I gathered their testimonials and then analyze them thematically, and I arrived into this result. So self-reflection. So how did they feel? How did they feel when they received the feedback? Right. So that was the question. How did you feel when you received the loud reading feedback? So first, self-reflection was the majority. Self-reflection, they appreciated the feedback, the error correction, motivation, and validation. So actually, these were all positive. There were no single, no single negative. I don't know if it's because I could see, because they know I'm their teacher. So this could have produced another result if another person have surveyed them. No? But this was done anonymously. And I'm still hoping, I'm still hoping that they really did tell the truth. But anyway, let's work with what we have. So for the first one, they had this self-reflection. So when they got their when they got the feedback, so they realized a lot of stuff. So for example, I realized that I should have researched them more thoroughly. So they have this self-reflection during the task, during what should have done, on what they should have done on the task preparation or the execution. So what they realize after the feedback. And of course, it's nice to be aware of the areas that I have to improve on. So this gives us an idea that not all students really react negatively or have negative emotions or feelings in feedback. So they really do interact with feedback and use it effectively. Next one. So this one is for appreciation. So again, another positive emotion that they presented in the study journal. For the error correction, I think this one is most this is the most crucial one, because when the student is able to identify the location of their errors, or where or pinpoint their mistakes, it really helps them improve, really help them make aware of the errors, and then improve these errors later on. So again, this shows how feedback and the specific kind of feedback could help our students self-regulate in the long run. So sometimes one of the trade-offs of feedback is that it demotivates the student. Hala, ito pala, ang pangit-pangit ko pala magbasa. But sometimes, it encouraged me. Okay, I will work harder. So at least for this case, so the feedback has motivated the student in improving and working harder on the task. And of course, some are probably the students who got positive feedback, so felt validated that because the feedback contained like really specific points like where they're good at. Okay. So now, ending this, I would like to share with you some tips or you might want to use when you are giving feedback to your students, especially if you will settle for written feedback, which has lots of limitations. So when giving feedback, I would really recommend you to use a variety of written feedback types. Let's not settle for praising, and let's not settle for just praising like great job, you did a great job. No, if we are going to praise our students, make sure to praise specific points on their performance so that they would know what their strong points are. Okay. And if you will give them directive feedback or suggestion explanation, also specifically pinpoint where those error locations are, so in the long run we can achieve our goal of a self-regulating learners. Next one. So again, this is also related to the first one. So deliver explicit and clear constructions in explaining and praising. So add personal touch. So some of the comments I gave were lack personal touch. So it would really mean to students, or rather than addressing them like you, or just giving them the imperative, no, like addressing the students by name also makes a difference. So it makes them feel that, okay, the teacher is talking to me, especially in the kind of setup, the online set. Although of course we're now transitioning to blending, no. So it's still if you would ever give written feedback, it would still make the student feel that these comments are not just mechanically written, but are also personal comments from the teacher. And again, like what I said earlier, know your customer, know your client. So it will be, I think it would be also a good tool, study journals, to know what your students think about the feedback, so that of course you yourself as a teacher could reflect. So reflective teaching, reflect on your comments, and then make certain adjustments to your clients, the students. Okay, and of course, I didn't put in the presentation. Some challenges are bound to be, of course, the it's really not practical to give a whole bunch of written comments with all the workload. No? But again, like what I said, in the long term, the feedback you will give will make your learners independent in the long run. So I guess it's a good investment na din in the long. And with that, I thank you very much for my presentation. I wasn't able to time it, but yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, you're doing great job for everyone. 감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다, yen 선생님. Thank you so much for sharing a very insightful presentation today. So you're still tuned in to the day 3 of the 8th Philippine Korean Studies Symposium. I think there are many questions posted already. I can see some comments here from our participants, and a lot of also questions addressed to our speakers today. So we are inviting all our 3 speakers, Eirish 선생님, Romnick Sonsingnim and Dian Sonsingnim can entertain questions from the audience. So please, open your camera. Please turn on your camera. And later on, you will also, of course, you're also free to ask questions to each other if you have some questions to ask each other. So right now, let me just read some of the questions here. Okay, we have this first question from Anna Sonsengnim. So I think all the three of you can answer this question. So Anna Sonsengnim said, we can all agree how practical it is to use the English language as the medium of instruction for teaching Korean. However, I wonder which grammar patterns were utilized to bridge the understanding of Korean sentence patterns. Were those English grammar patterns or Filipino grammar patterns? Yeah, so feel free to answer this question from Anna Sonsengnim. We can ask. Eirish Sonsingnim.
Would you like to I'm just confused with the question, Sonsingnim.
Okay.
Your question is about how do we teach?
I think she's asked. I think she was talking about how most of us would use English as our MOI when teaching Korean, but when it comes to teaching grammar patterns in Korean, do you try to compare it using English grammar patterns or Filipino grammar patterns? I'm not sure if I understood it correctly. Is that right, Anna Sonsengnim? Would you like to?
Yeah, in my case, Sonsingnim, I'll try to answer the question, Sonsingnim.
Okay. Eirish Sonsingnim.
Okay, in my case, Sonsingnim, I think although I'm not really a language teacher, my background is more on history and social studies and civic education. But there are times that when I'm teaching grammar, I also compared it to English structure so that they would know the differences, and sometimes also trying to tell them the similarities of some Korean pattern to actually not similarities, but more on differences of Korean sentence structure to English and Filipino. So I think you were trying to explain it, but the instruction, the use of English as a medium of instruction is more on presenting the student about how the grammar function and the rules when it comes to the application of grammar points. More on like that yung paggamit ko po. In my case, I don't know with the case of Sir Romnick and Miss Yen, Professor Yen. How about you, Sir Romnick? How do you...
Sir Romnick?
Okay, in my case, I learned this when I was training. I learned about the Korean language as left branching language. I always emphasize this to my class, particularly when we try to distinguish or differentiate, the placement of words in the sentence. Since it's a left branching, I always emphasize this, that when you construct a sentence and it's a complete sentence, you always need to start with a subject. And you have to always make sure that the verbs will be at the last part of the sentence. And then if you are trying to include some vocabs, you have to place it in between them. So that is what I learned from my Korean professor before, that Korean is a left branching language. And in terms of code mixing, I think it's more helpful to use English or even in Tagalog in teaching the Korean language, because this is the language most of the students can really relate, diba? Can really relate. And from that, we believe that they will learn more if we try to infuse these languages while teaching grammar structure.
Yeah, very simple, very practical, no, from Romnick Sonsingnim. So at least for basic Korean, ma-apply natin ito. Kamsahamnida Sonsingnim. 네, 알겠습니다. Okay.
So that-
Yan sa
yeah.
inyo?
Yeah, so I think just I could of course for the MOI still tag list since the students I teach are still most comfortable in code switching. But I would like to point out two particular structures, grammar structures na tinuturo ko talaga in Filipino. For example, it's the case markers, iga, Israel. So I usually use the sentence, kumain si Juan ng mangga. And then if nagpalit yung si and nang, it will be kumain si mangga ng Juan, which will turn into a really scary sentence. So in order for the students to pick that up, I usually compare it to the Filipino. Another one are the noun modifiers. So in English, it really doesn't show. If you say that, for example, dhan mango. Okay, so dhan kaye. Okay, but you can say just sweet fruit, and the and there would not really appear. So I usually tell my students, and it's actually written in the module I read for the students, matamis na frutas, matamis na manga. So the na there will be the noun modifier. So they would, compare these features. Usually I use Filipino if it's, more closer to the structure I teach. So I think, I hope that could help. Yeah, ano something.
Yeah, 감사합니다, 선생님. Oh, so those were very good examples, no? I think those are basic level grammar patterns, which you can also use in your own classes, 선생님. 네, 감사합니다. Now let's look at this question. This next question addressed to Eirish 선생님 and Romnick 선생님 from Dr. Kyungmin Bae. So it will be nice to hear how SPFL Korean classroom set up is at this moment as many schools resumed face-to-face settings, especially in terms of material use or dissemination, performance evaluation. Yeah, so yung status ng SPFL Korean classroom these days. Eirish 선생님 and Romnick 선생님. 네.
Okay, regarding with that, thank you for that. Well, regarding to that, of course, we have to follow the health protocol of the Department of Education and IAEF. So, yung classroom is we open up. We usually limit the size of the class into 35 lang, so that it would be manageable for learning. And in our case, in the Piñas, our principal is already designated 2 classrooms for SPFL grade 7 to 10, and then he equipped the classroom with the TV and television, because before in our school walang ganun eh. So he equipped it para mas ma-enhance yung speaking and listening activities ng mga bata, and viewing as well. And of course, however, there's no internet. But when it comes to accessible learning materials, madaming binigay yung IKEF at saka Ministry of Education of Republic of Korea. So so far we have 1:1 learning resources when it comes to our students. Plus, they also provided us with various classroom mga visual aids that we can use, especially for the free A1 learner. Kasi nga, we noticed that there's some learning gap. Nung nagka-pandemic kasi, one of our problem is some of our students still doesn't know how to read Hangul kasi hindi sila properly monitored because of distance learning. So we're trying to bridge that gap. And then at the same time, our school is also providing a section in our learning resource center wherein we can put some of the materials of SPFL that was donated by IKEF and KCC. And I think this week only, I think KCC and DepEd already conducted a survey on kung ilan yung numbers na kailangan namin regarding with the additional supplementary materials for Korean language. So that's one thing. And I received a survey from IKEF. I think they are planning to also provide digital materials of the customized or localized textbook so that mas madaling ma-access. So I think when it comes to learning resources, madami this time. Pero of course, the distinction is yung sa localization, which is hopefully hindi lang sa grade 7 nakafocus, eventually hanggang grade 10 magawa din po. When it comes to performance, I think yun yung mahirap on my end. I think I will admit I'm still not confident in developing assessment, especially a standardized assessment tool for my students. So I think the teachers should be trained on how to create a more valid and reliable assessment or testing tools for our learners so that we could really figure out, or we can at least diagnose kung ano talaga yung mga areas na kailangan to help our student to reinforce their mastery of learning Korean language. So I think that's in my case and my school. Sir Romnick, how about
something.
When we opened the limited face-to-face class way back 2021, if I'm not mistaken, or 2022. So we follow these safety protocols of the Department of Education. So we limit the number of students to 20 only. Some would be attending online distance learning class, while others would have to attend face-to-face class. So there were only 20 students per class then. Regarding the classroom setup, we usually ask for sponsorship, like to maintain our SPFL classroom, because we would like to provide a classroom to our learners which is, kumbaga, it gives them Korean vibes, like posters, signages, etc. So that is how we maintain. I think now that we are having the face-to-face class, we started it last 2019, and we are keeping it the same way. Okay, last 2019, when we had the monitoring, kasi those are the pieces of advice we got from our from the department on how to be able to make learning more fun and really interactive on the part of the learners.
Thank you, Eirish. Something.
I'm sorry. I have to add more regarding the resources. So like what Ma'am Irish said, so we have a lot of resources. We can even get resources from Burisejo. You can download their videos that discuss grammar rules, okay, in a way that learners can understand. Since the discussion is in English, so I think there are a lot of resources available online, and even the ones given by our partner institutions like KCC, the IKEF.
네, 감사합니다. So now we have here a question about teaching strategies, from Mary Jane Peoro. She's asking our speakers today if they could share some teaching strategies that they found to be effective in teaching Korean language. Maybe we can ask one from each of our speakers today. So medyo marami tayong pwedeng i-share, but maybe you could just share one strategy which you found to be effective in teaching basic Korean language.
Sir Romnick, would you like me first or you?
Yes.
Sige, ikaw muna.
So I would like to share what I learned, okay, from our Korean professors. The use of songs, okay, the use of songs, the use of games, okay, in teaching the language is really very effective. I think that's one way to really make the learning fun and enjoyable among learners, that we have to use songs, games in teaching the language. It's not only teaching it in terms teaching it like technically teaching the grammar, but we can always, or the words, the vocabs, we can always use some of the available videos we can find that use these words, these vocabs, or even the grammar particles. And then in addition, we can also integrate culture, because I believe, and I observe this to my students, when I integrate culture in my discussions, okay, they participate more, because I think they can relate to this, since this is their era, okay, it's their age, so they can provide more inputs the same way the teachers are providing inputs to their students. I think we integrate the culture, and we try to see the commonalities of this culture from ours, Filipinos.
Okay po. In our case naman po in Las Piñas, I think one of the best program that we develop, I think, is our partnership with Incheon Gonghang Kodong Hakyo when it comes to Korean language speaking enhancement program that we had. Because of course, iba pa rin kasi pag may kausap silang native speakers. So I think in our case, when we were talking, our team in SPFL, I think medyo nakukulangan din kami sa ability namin when it comes to enhancement of speaking ability. So we really tried to partner with some school in South Korea so that we could provide that. And then in that particular program, the teacher in Incheon taught her students in, I think, senior high school or high school in Korea on how to teach our students some how to properly pronounce Korean words and some dialogue so that our student can enhance their ability in speaking Korean. And at the same time, they're also integrating culture so that our student can learn directly from a Korean on how they go on their regular school life and then the Korean culture. And then the Filipino students as well share our culture. So I think there's some their intercultural competencies developed through that way. And I think that's very effective. That's why this school year, we are also looking for an opportunity to partner again. I think not in Incheon, but I think in Daejeon, we will be partnering with middle school in Incheon to continue our Korean speaking enhancement program. So I think yun yung isa. And I think it's a learner-centered approach because the student learn from their kapwa estudyante. So I think that's a very good approach when it comes to that. And as you know, Filipino student, when they talk to Korean, they really, really feel happy and very motivated. So I think that's a good approach. And I hope that more other school can also bridge or find some connection with other school. And I think I hope that would be more helpful for their students po.
How question lang, Sonsing, how does it exactly work? Like, do you do that every week or every other week?
We're
like
doing it on
tutorial
Saturday.
Or
More a tutorial, but we're doing it on Saturday session. I think twice a month. And then first, of course, we have some planning together with the teacher in Korea so that the teacher in Korea would know kung ano yung mga least mastered skills namin or yung mga areas kung saan nahihirapan yung mga Filipino students. So we communicate that learning gap to them, and then fortunately, Sung Hye Song Sing Nim is really, really nice to us. So she really taught her students on how to address those needs, and yun yung pinifeature nila during the Saturday session. So the Saturday session only happened about 1 hour, and I think my students became more motivated on studying and harnessing their speaking ability because they make friends with the Korean student that they are partnered with. So I think that's a good motivation for our students. Kasi some of the students sometimes they felt that why am I studying Korean language? Sometimes they felt that it is irrelevant for me because I'm not speaking to real Korean people, and there are very small chance and opportunity in the school na that they can really apply what they learned in Korean. So actually, those are the challenges that we really think into when we were designing the program with Incheon Kodong Hakyo.
Thank you, Sonsing Nim. And Yan, Sonsing Nim.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with both Sonsing Nim, especially din sa sinabi ni Sir Romnick na you take advantage of what you have for the resources. I mean, I always tell my students, you're very lucky you have these resources kasi nung nag-aaral nga ako, wala kaming ganyang resources. So also, of course, the Korean content is everywhere. So I always tell my students that. And students would always say, ma'am, what's the best way? Like I think it's also the same with the teachers now. What's the best strategy to teach Korean, ganyan? I also believe that every student is different. So you can't really tell them that do this because this is the best way. So I always I hope that also other teachers could also recognize that each of their students have different, strategies as well, learning strategies and learning abilities. So I always tell my students that I could present you with lots of strategies and lots of tips on how to learn Korean. But the important thing is you should know, again, this is a self-regulatory strategy then for them. So you should be able to know what strategy matches you. So I always tell them to try, these different approaches and then decide what's the best for them. So I think, yeah, that's mine. strategy.
Yeah, thank you, Yan Sansing-Nim. Now, next question for Romnick Sansing-Nim again. No, this question is from Farah Sensei. How do you integrate ODL strategies or activities to your face-to-face classes? Sansing-Nim.
When I attended a training on a training sponsored and facilitated by the DepEd, I learned some of the apps that can be used even offline. So I think we can also use this gamified PowerPoint presentations given by us. So I use this in case that will only have limited internet connection in school. But there are instances that we can actually access internet because our GPTA made our school ano yan? Made our school or sponsored Wi-Fi connections of our school, making it a Wi-Fi zone, I think.
Yeah.
So in such case, we can use even the online apps in our classes, since our classrooms are equipped with multimedia equipment. I think it will still work. Also, there are instances that since we are having a hard time to connect with the internet connection, for example, when we are having the face-to-face class, as a teacher, you need really to be resourceful. So allowing your learners to connect to your device somehow will help them really do what you expect them to do in that day if you are planning to have a gamified activity. So so that also calls for your generosity as teacher to really provide for your learners.
Yeah, thank you, Sansing-Nim. So there's another question here from Farah Sensei. This one is addressed to Eirish Sansing-Nim. Sansing-Nim, how do you plan to keep the materials updated in this fast-changing world? The SPFL, I think pre-A1 Korean material that you actually developed with the Korean team. Eirish Sansing-Nim.
I think my plan is to adopt Miss Yen Sansing-Nim's approach when it comes to dialogic feedbacking. I think that her presentation a while ago will help us to know more our learners, because the student will tell us ano yung needs nila, saan pa pwedeng area mag-improve. So I think looking at the lens of our students help us to determine more their needs and the grayscale of teaching Korean language, so that we could be more updated. And I am very fortunate, and the rest of the people here, that we heard the paradigm or the framework presented by Professor Yan Chua, and I think that's a good one that we could adopt for us to really make an update of our learning resources. So thank you, Ms. Chua.
Is there already a plan? Yeah, thank you, Yan Sansing-Nim, for sharing your strategy. So is there already a plan, like when to update the books, or every how many years this should be updated, or
so far, Sansing-Nim, wala pa akong, I don't have any idea, because I think the team is the team led by Professor Yan Chua is still under developing the next localized material for quarter 3 and quarter 4 for grade 7. So I think dun pa lang. And from what we had from the meeting that we had with Director Shin of IKEF, I think ang first priority muna nila is grade 7, and they will still further study if they will extend the development of localized textbook to grade 8 up to 10 of junior high school. So I think so far I don't know if when they will update it, but I think nandun pa lang sila sa completion part on of making grade 7 materials available for Filipino learners.
Yeah, thank you, Sansing-Nim. Okay, now there's a question here for Yen Sansing-Nim, and this one is from the Sansing-Nim. It's very important to point out how Yen Sansing-Nim shows feedback into short-term and long-term goals. Now the question is, do you explicitly point this out for students to constantly raise their awareness, or rather utilize implicit way?
I think
So
this
that's the question
depends.
from
Yeah, I
okay,
think this
mm,
depends
mm,
on the teacher's beliefs and attitude. Kasi I believe
mhm,
that you should pinpoint the specific error location for them to realize it. Kasi if you won't, parang for them, especially, I think it's also connected with the level. I think it's because I teach beginner level students
mhm,
that they don't have a grasp, a command of the language
mhm,
yet. So as much as possible, I try to
mhm,
be as explicit as and specific as possible, no, when I address these error corrections. Although it could be a good research then to venture, no, what could be a better strategy, especially for the intermediate and advanced students. So that may be there's something new. Would you like yeah, we probably could explore that one in the future. But yeah, because I think it's with the level and the teacher's attitudes that
yeah.
I tended to explicitly point these error
Mhm.
corrections.
Okay, thank you, Sonsei Nim. Another question of Korean Sonsei Nim. This one is from Anna Sonsei Nim. Her message is that I'm just gonna read the text that she sent here on the chat box. I love how detailed and specific your feedback giving styles are, considering how students commit very common mistakes. Like they usually commit the same mistakes anyway. We might give them generic feedback. How do you manage to give feedback with fresh eyes to your students?
Yeah,
So
so I
that's
think
her
yeah, I'm
question.
also human.
Mm,
So probably hindi
mm,
ko 100% na
mm,
differentiate
mm,
lahat. As much as possible I try
mm.
to. That's why one of the tips I gave
Yeah.
is to add your personal touch pa rin. So I think it would
Mm,
even though no generally the same naman, I think it would appear different to the student. For example, it really helps if you call their name, if you write their name. It's a simple gesture, no, but it will really make a difference in the view of the student. So dun pala makita ng students, okay,
mm,
I'm just not, you. I'm also a part of
mm.
I'm existing in her class. So I think we could also use that strategy as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sonsei Nim. Now I'm gonna look at the chat box again to look for more questions from the participants. I think there's a message here. Let's just read some of the messages here from the audience. No? There's a message from Sir Drosel John Loalhati Morada. Thank you, Teacher Yen, for a very detailed presentation on written feedback. Your presentation is a great reminder that written feedback matters to students. Okay, so here I think there is a question from Farah Sensei to Yen Sonsei Nim. No? I think our learners and us teachers also are not used to reflective learning and self-assessment. Do you see any changes in the attitudes of students to self-assessment and reflection?
I think more of the changes. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's like with them communicating to themselves, reflecting on their own learning process. So I think
Yeah.
more than
Mm-hmm.
really changing their attitude, they get to know how they learn better, what their strong points are. So it really reflects on how they react on the study journals. So, hindi ko pa na-venture if they really had
Mm-hmm.
changes in attitude, but definitely, I think this is more, of course, it helps the both of us. So it helps me know them more, and of course, to know themselves more when how they learn the Korean language. No? So I think, yeah, but for the changes, parang hindi pa ako nakafocus doon. But if you will, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, other teachers as well, if you will venture the use of study journals, I really had a positive feedback about it. I've been doing the study journal since the pandemic, since there's really no way to, address these concerns real time. So that we had synchronous and asynchronous classes as well. So, and to be honest, hindi nagbubukas ng mga cameras yung mga students. So you don't know like what their reactions are, if nag-work pa ba yung strategy ko sa kanila.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think yeah, so I think it's
Yeah.
sometimes I think it's it's more helpful for me kaysa for them. But when I see their
Mm-hmm.
feedback na something Nim, really thank you for this journal, para siyang naging hingahan, like parang ganun kind of sort. So
Mm-hmm.
although of course language proficiency is important, I also view important yung effective filter ng students, like how they feel in the language classroom. Are they relaxed? or their pressure to learn the language. So I think these are also variables we can consider in the KFL field.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Ayan Sonsignim. Oh, and I received a message here. Changkamanyo. Okay. There's a question from Ronel Kalunod to Eirish Sonsignim, addressed to Eirish Sonsignim. You mentioned earlier that learning gaps are quite obvious for those students who have been learning the language during the pandemic. Do you have any learning recovery plans or LRPs to fill those gaps? Thank you. So that's the message from Sir Kalunod. Eirish Sonsignim.
Ang bigat ng term na recovery, but anyway, very definite. Anyway, I think in our case, the intervention plan, I think there's some grayscale when it comes to really knowing how our student learned. And at the same time, we need to utilize some assessment, needs assessment for our student to really find out kung ano yung weaknesses nila and area na kung paano natututo yung mga SPFL students. I think that's one of the study that we could explore so that we could create a more relevant solution to that problem. And at the same time, the intervention plan that I mentioned a while ago that we facilitated in our school is more on the speaking enhancement program and remedial program for those students who experience difficulties in reading and writing Hangul even when nung pagpasok nila during face-to-face. And our approach is they're learning through their classmates as well. Kasi I think the students, katulad na sinabi ni Miss Yin, may anxiety kasi sila or ma-anxiety sila pag nag-aaral ng foreign language. And yung self-efficacy nila medyo mababa. So I think they are more relaxed when they are learning through their classmates. That's why in our remedial reading program, we are training some students who have an advanced knowledge on reading Hangul, and then they are the one who are teaching their classmates, and we are monitoring them. And when they need our help, we are going to the peer so that we could help them. But definitely, I think yun nga katulad ng sinabi ni Miss Yen, we have to know more on the affective side of our students kasi it's affect on how they perceive the lesson and their attitude toward learning Korean language. So I think we need to explore on that idea, on that area, especially in high school, especially in junior high school, in public school, because I think there's very few studies related to that. So I think that's my take on that, so that we could create a more responsive recovery plan when it comes to Korean language learning in SPFL.
Thank you, Sonsignim. Now we have here a question I think that our Sonsignims can answer from Ma'am Irene Sheila Latonero. Let me just check the question again. Okay, hello po. I find that student-students exchange of learning effective and interesting. However, who, where, and how can we bridge schools to Korea? How can we connect to schools to Korea?
In my case, I started that because I was involved in an exchange program, and I met some Korean teachers who also has interest with intercultural exchange program. That's why I developed some network to them. And I think that's one thing that DepEd could explore, because I think there's a lot of schools in South Korea who would like to partner with different countries in Southeast Asia in establishing an intercultural or Korean language program with us. So I think that's one thing that the Department of Education could explore, so that the teachers or the schools who have interest in partnering with other schools in South Korea could facilitate that activity.
Thank you, Sonsignim. How about the other Sonsignim? Would you have some suggestions on ways to which we can connect to other schools in Korea?
Case,
yeah, Romnick.
Yes,
Sonseng
yes,
Nim.
Sonseng Nim. In our case po, we have connection to our teachers when we studied in Korea. And this teacher, Ma'am Yeri Sonseng Nim, actually gave free language classes. So every time that she will be handling or she will be holding classes, she would be posting, okay, the link to her FB page. So that's the time we will be accessing this link. And we are also reminded that she will have a class, and if we have time, we can attend her class. So that is how we um, how we formed connection with this teacher. And in the case of other schools who haven't experienced learning from a Korean language teacher, I think there are a lot of institutions offering also this kind of language course. I just don't know if they can give this for free, but there are institutions that really are generous, providing learners free language courses. So I think we can find ways on how we'll be able to reach them. Thank you po.
Thank you, Sonseng Nim.
Yeah, I think this is more of an institutional parang question. So I think there are institutions which would bridge really the connection
Yeah.
for student exchange learning. But I think apart from that, we could add yung mga NGO and other religious organizations. I think they also foster an environment for that kind of exchange. So if you would like to venture that, probably yun po yung suggestion.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Sonseng Nim. Now we have here a comment, a nice comment from Anna Sonseng Nim. Peer teaching and collaboration is always helpful for developing language competence. After all, we study languages in order to communicate, and communication is always a two-way street where it can only be tested through practicing with another person. Okay, so we have here another question from Ma'am Stacy. Hello po, I would like to ask if you're following the milks of SPFL or you just follow the sequence in pre-A1 book, for example. Kamsahamnida.
In the case in our school, I think I'm not teaching grade 7, but I heard from my colleagues in grade 7 that they are following the localized, the customized pre-A1 textbook since it is already aligned with SPFL. So she's following the teacher's guide so that because it's already aligned. So parang she is just aligning it using the DLL, but basically most of the activities presented in the textbook and teacher's guide is already incorporated to the daily lesson log, which is already aligned with the milk. So that's what I've heard from Miss Rose of our school, who is teaching SPFL grade 7.
Thank you, Sonseng Nim. Now we have here a question for Yen Sonseng Nim. No? So this question is related to Farah Sonseng Nim's question earlier about reflective learning and self-assessment. No? How many times do you apply the dialogic feedback in class? Do you consider the time, maybe the number of assessments, and also the number of students, the class size you have, Sonseng Nim?
Okay, I think so dialogic feedback is not something that you could quantify na, okay, I give dialogic feedback this time, no. It's more of like a concept that in order for the students to effectively utilize, to even look, to even look at your feedback, digest it, and then apply it to the next task and the recurring task, no. You should be able to provide effective feedback as well. So I think that's the main premise of dialogic feedback. It's not something you would give like in one class, one size, no. So it's really more of how you would present or provide your feedback that your students would effectively utilize it. So that's that. So I think it's a challenge for every educator and how to, make their students digest the feedback and use it. Kasi, I mean, let's face it, ilan ba yung bumabalik talaga na feedback sa class? Like, do the students even ask about the feedback? So make sure along the class you you remind them that read your feedback, ask me if you have questions. So it's also it partners with other strategies as well. So you'll be open up for questions. That's why there are also types na you could provide questions as well for them to answer. Okay, but for me, I found the study journals like a tool to bridge that dialogic feedback. Kasi when I ask them about the feedback, so they tend to look at the feedback. So parang naging assignment type kind of thing siya, but in a more relaxed way since the study journals are not really a strict requirement in class. It's more of like, an informal formative tool of assessment for them. So yeah, that's one thing I use, so the one tool I use for the class to have a dialogic feedback cycle.
Okay, thank you, Sonsei Nim. Now, okay, are there any more questions from the audience, the participants? Okay, if there are none, I think we can just ask for maybe a message from each of our speaker to our participants today, because most of our participants here are KFL, language teachers. So do you have some message, maybe tips, or maybe some words of encouragement for our teachers here who are joining us today in our morning session of our PKSS 2023? Maybe Romnick Sonsenim can start. Just a last message for our audience today.
Okay, thank you for taking part in this event, in this online event. And I hope that this will be the start that we will collaborate as teachers of DepEd. The only thing I can that I can give you is that we all know we are aware of our situations as a teacher of Korean language, knowing that we are not only teaching Korean, we are also teachers of other subjects. And if you really want to share, okay, and make your learners be the best, they want be the best, okay, they want to be in the future. I believe it should first start with us teachers, because as we all know, we cannot really teach what we don't have. So there are instances that you'll find really difficulty in teaching the language, particularly the advanced topics. I think the best way is to always keep yourself updated, okay, to these lessons. Also, there are several trends, okay, language trends that we can use in our classes, making the teaching and learning more meaningful to our learners. And let's always, when we teach the language, let's always try to really connect it, okay, to the reasons why they are learning the language. So the practical reasons why they are learning the language. So, and I always hear this from my professors that despite the challenges, okay, that you are experiencing as a teacher, you have to really cheer up. So, 힘내세요, 선생님들. 감사합니다.
감사합니다, 선생님. Irish 선생님.
I'll just make it very short. I think we have to continue on being critical and reflective when it comes to teaching our Korean language, so that we could be more sensitive with the students' need, and of course ourselves. Kailangan alam din natin kung ano yung mga weaknesses natin and strengths, so that we could harness and we could develop. That's for the benefit of our student, and we always have to put our student at the center of what we are doing or of teaching, so that even at the most challenging time, we could keep on moving forward and keep our enthusiasm on teaching this program. So to all the SPFL teacher and other teachers, Korean teachers, I know it's not really easy, because we're doing a lot of things, but I know that through concerted efforts and more of exchanges of idea and more collaborative work, we can pass through all the challenges. And what Sir Romnick said, 힘내세요 and 할수있어요. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, 선생님. And Yen, 선생님.
Yeah, so actually, I was about to say the same thing as Miss Eirish, no? But before that, yeah, thank you for Paul, Miss Eirish Sansangnim and Romnick Sansangnim. We've seen each other usually dun sa pag-perform ng book, no? It's really nice to see you present today po. And I'm also really happy to see na ganun pala ginagamit yung mga ginagawa namin every week na book. But it's really nice to see you here in this presentation. And also, yes, continue to be critical, research, wag tayo makakontento sa kung ano yung meron sa atin ngayon. So it's really so that's why take advantage of these workshops, no? So it's very pleasant to have you here, but I would really I'd like to tell everyone that you're very lucky because you're able to learn from each other. So I hope UPKRC could also, like, in the future, organize these kinds of workshop for our KFL educators as well. So thank you. Have a nice day and kamsahamnida.
Ang ganda niya.
네, 감사합니다. Thank you very much, everyone, for your active participation. And to conclude this morning session, let us just present the certificate of appreciation for our speakers today. Okay, let me read now. Certificate of appreciation. This certificate is presented to Ma'am Eirish Zulueta for facilitating the workshop session entitled Using Localized KFL Materials for SPFL Korean Grade 7 Students at the 8th Philippine Korean Studies Symposium, KFL Educators Workshop organized by the University of the Philippines Korea Research Center and the Department of Linguistics at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, given on the 4th of February, 2023.
Thank you po.
네, 감사합니다. And the same certificate of appreciation is presented to Sir Romnick Nicolas, as well as Maria Concepcion Loren Chua. So the contents are the same for all the certificates. Thank you so much for sharing insightful presentations on teaching Korean, on your experiences teaching Korean in your respective institutions. So now let me ask our speakers for a photo op. Please open your camera, Ma'am Eirish, Sir Romnick, and Dian Sonsengnim for our photo op. Okay. I think we're ready now. So, 하나, 둘, 셋. 네, 다시 한번 찍을게요. 1, 2, 3. 네, 좋습니다. So again, please let's give a virtual round of applause for our speakers today. And before we formally conclude the morning session, reminder, we will have a lunch break until 1 o'clock, and we're going to resume at 1 p.m. for the afternoon research presentations. So you can just go back to using the same Zoom link. And thank you so much for joining us in this morning session. We're going to see you later. 네, 감사합니다. Maraming salamat po.